So, you've probably heard the term Abrahamic religions, right? It's this, big family name for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all tracing their spiritual roots back to one guy. And Islam's place in that family? It usually seems like a given. But what if we really look closer? How solid is that foundation really? Let's dig in.
Right, so that gets us to the heart of it. Was Abraham, or Ibrahim as he's known in Islam, a real historical person who actually walked the earth? Or is he maybe a powerful foundational symbol, a story that serves a much deeper purpose? Well, the answer, as you're about to see, completely depends on the tools you use to look for it, the sacred scriptures of faith or the hard evidence of historical science.
Okay, first up, let's build the case for Islam's place in the Abrahamic family. This is the mainstream, widely accepted view. And you know what? The most powerful evidence for it comes directly from Islam's sacred text itself.
This one verse from the Qur'an, it is absolutely key. It basically positions Abraham as the original Muslim, and I mean that in its most literal sense, someone who submits to God. So the text isn't saying Islam is some brand new religion, not at all. It's arguing that it's a restoration of Abraham's pure original faith, a faith that, from this point of view, actually came before both Judaism and Christianity.
And when you lay it all out side by side like this, man, the family resemblance is just undeniable. You can see the shared DNA, a core belief in one God, a long tradition of prophets, a deep reverence for Abraham himself, and even the shared sanctity of Jerusalem. These are the theological pillars that really connect all three faiths.
So, and this is really important, this isn't just a religious claim being made from the inside. We're talking about the academic world here. In fields like religious studies, anthropology, and history, the consensus is crystal clear. Mainstream scholarship overwhelmingly classifies Islam as an Abrahamic faith because of these incredibly deep theological and cultural roots. All right, let's shift gears a bit and look at the actual texts. Let's see how this story is built. Because both the Bible and the Qur'an tell the story of Abraham. But you see they kind of put the spotlight on different parts of his journey. They create these distinct but clearly related portraits of the same man.
So check this out. It's like a shared story that hits a massive fork in the road. In the Hebrew Bible, the sacred lineage, the covenant, it all flows through Abraham's son, Isaac. But in the Qur'an, the focus shifts. It highlights his role as a Hanif, which is basically a pure, natural monotheist, someone who got the one God thing before all the organized religions came along. And, this is huge, it connects him and his other son, Ishmael, directly to Mecca, saying they rebuilt the Kaaba. That one divergence, well, it establishes a whole distinct spiritual lineage for Islam.
Okay, so far, the case seems pretty solid, right? It's all built on scripture and tradition, but now we're going to make a hard pivot. We're putting down the holy books for a moment and picking up the archaeologist tools. And what we find, well, it's a very different story. Now we're entering the world of verifiable empirical evidence. The question becomes really simple. If Abraham was a real person living way back in the 2nd millennium BCE, what kind of trace did he leave behind for us to find? 0. After decades and decades of searching, that is the number of direct, unambiguous artifacts, inscriptions, or contemporary records that prove the existence of Abraham, not a single one. From a purely historical and archaeological perspective, there's nothing but silence. And here's why so many historians are skeptical. Scholars who dedicated their lives to this point out that the stories in Genesis, they just don't really match the archaeological record of that time. We found no mentions of Abraham in the records from his supposed hometown of Ur, and that critical Islamic tradition connecting Abraham and Ishmael to Mecca, that also lacks any archaeological support from that ancient era. To a historian, the stories feel much more like powerful literature written down way later. But, and this is a really big but, we have to be fair. Most historians aren't actually that surprised by this. I mean, think about it. Back in the Bronze Age, if you weren't a king or a high-ranking general, the chances of you leaving any kind of record behind were practically 0. So the silence of the stones doesn't prove he didn't exist. It just means we can't historically verify that he did. So, how do we square this circle? We have this incredibly powerful religious tradition on one side and a completely silent historical record on the other. Well, the key might be to realize they're not actually competing. They might just be two different ways of knowing. This right here gets to the absolute heart of the matter. On one side, you have religious truth. For billions of people, Abraham is true because he's the ultimate model of faith, a spiritual ancestor.
Then on the other side, you have historical truth, which demands verifiable physical evidence. From that viewpoint, Abraham is a figure we just can't prove. But see, these aren't necessarily contradictory. They're just answering very different questions. So, the main takeaway is this. The label Abrahamic, it's a theological and a cultural category. It describes a family of faiths that all see themselves as the heirs to Abraham's spiritual legacy. The strength of that claim rests on shared beliefs and sacred stories, and it's almost entirely separate from whether a historian can go out and dig up his house. And this leaves us with one last thought to chew on. For the billions of people who draw inspiration from Abraham's story of faith, does it actually matter if he can't be found in the historical record? It really forces us to ask a bigger question about what we even mean by truth. Does a symbol, an ideal that has literally shaped civilizations, need to be a verifiable fact to be profoundly true?